Hey guys, what's going on? It's Mons here with another episode of Mons and More. So today I'm going to be going through, I'm going to be doing an insight to the Acura brand. I had recently did one on another one, on my Dodge. I don't know if you caught that video. But today I'm going to be doing the Acura breakdown. And then soon I'm going to be doing Honda, which is basically the main company. I just want to go through a few insights of, again, basically how the brand currently sits in terms of the way their lineup looks and just kind of gaps that they do have, that they used to have when the Acura brand itself had, it was more spread out and had a lot more market coverage, and it doesn't have those same things anymore. Again, what sparked this one was, it was about, I want to say about 5-6 weeks ago, there was they put a post on there somewhere online. I forget exactly where I had saw it, but they had made an announcement, and they made such like a big deal out of it about the bringing back the TLX Type S model. Now, if you know Acura, you know that basically the Type S is their performance model of whichever vehicle you're looking at. So they're going to be bringing it back. That announcement is going to be coming soon. But they made such a big deal out of it that they wanted a lot of credit. And that's just something that people have been criticizing them for such a long time, that it wasn't a big deal to those people. This is long overdue. So we're just going to go through and just go piece by piece on here. Now, just so you know, well, my background with Acura, in my family, we've had a lot of Hondas. Acuras. I have my second Acura now. I had a 2017 TLX. I've now got a 2020 MDX. My wife has an RDX. My dad had a TL. He almost bought a CL at one point. So we've had 4 Acuras in the family and a whole bunch of other Hondas there too. So there's a lot of familiarity with the brand. I sold them for 2.5 years. I still follow them in between, even if there's been something else I've had with them, in between my Mazda, my Hyundai, my Infiniti. So I'm right there. I like the brand. It's just like, again, there are things they have to be, that they got to do to cover. Now, just real quick, if we go through, we're going to talk about the lineup here. Now, they have 6 models. Technically, you could say 5 because one of them is an exotic sports car that has such an exotic, crazy price point. You know, that's a very, very small, minimal, select person that's going to be looking at that. So 5 of them obviously are, you know, bulk market, but again, they do offer 6 vehicles. So you have your compact car, which is going to be your ILX. Okay, now that has a history of the Acura Integra, and then after that was the RSX. So those were very popular cars. The Integra was a sedan and a coupe. The RSX was a coupe. The ILX is only a sedan. So that's something that you figure since 2013 that's been in the lineup. That offers you a good entry point into the brand at roughly about $26,000. So it kind of gets you into a good jump with a lot of nice amenities. The next vehicle that you would have is the popular one. Again, it was the one I had, is now the TLX. Previously, it was known as the Acura TL, and even going way back further than that, it was the Vigor, which was into the late 80s and early part of the 90s. Now, the TLX is offered in a 4-cylinder and a 6-cylinder. Now, on a previous model, you could say, okay, well, the 4-cylinder version of the TLX is basically what the TSX was, and the 6-cylinder of the TLX is what the previous TL was, offered in front wheel or all-wheel drive with the V6. So you get those options there. Again, either 4-cylinder, 6-cylinder, or all-wheel drive. That vehicle starts at about 33 and change. So again, you got a good point there, and again, a lot of standard features on there that are good. You have your full-size vehicle. It's a very, very small market. There's a lot of vehicles out there, but for this vehicle, for the RLX, it's a small market. Again, it's a larger full-size vehicle. The car's an overachiever. There's a lot that the vehicle comes with standard. There's only one package worth of options, so there's really not too much to really add into it because it comes with so much stuff. However, because of the class that it's in, it's competing with cars that are definitely more superior to it, and that's what hurts it. But there is a standard front-wheel drive vehicle that is 310 horsepower on that one, or you can get a sport hybrid, which is 377 horsepower, and that has the super handling all-wheel drive. Now, the one thing that really stands out about this car, which they made a big deal out of it, and it kind of set the way, is the powertrain and the all-wheel drive system on this vehicle was basically what was setting the way for the NSX to be born. That everything, all the concepts of that stuff was basically being tested in this vehicle into what obviously is in the NSX now. So that's basically on your cars there. Over to the SUVs. I'm sorry, let me go back here for a second. To the SUVs, you've got your compact SUV, which is the RDX. That's basically the big brother, more dressed up than if you're familiar with the Honda CR-V or some other cars in there. Now, again, a lot of standard features on here. This is the 3rd generation vehicle. Now, I was actually surprised in just kind of getting some figures, doing some research on here. The RDX is actually Acura's most popular vehicle in terms of sales. I thought actually the MDX was. I was actually surprised at that. The MDX is number 2, the RDX is number 1. The new 2019, 2020, the current model and design, the car is sharp. I had one for a week back in December when I was getting some work done on my car. I enjoy driving it. The thing drives like a sports sedan. It hugs the road. It's very powerful. I was upset having to give that car back. I only knew it was going to be a short few days, but I enjoyed it in that short period of time. The RDX, you can get an either front-wheel drive or all-wheel drive. That starts at about just under 38, and then obviously you can go up there. I think it tops out at about, I want to say about 46, maybe 47. I think might be a touch high, but you have it right in that range. And then you have your bigger SUV, which is your midsize SUV, 3-row, 7-passenger. That's the MDX. That's the one that I have. I list this as the true champ of the lineup. It's always been a top seller. It comes with features above and beyond what most people really need. The biggest things people would come in and look at this, and they say, oh, I don't necessarily need a 3rd row. I just need a vehicle that size. A lot of the times people come in, you just put the 3rd row down, you don't even have to use it. It folds very good. You have yourself, so it's optional. If you want a 5-passenger, you put the 3rd row down, you would never even know it's there. If you need it in a pinch, it's there. Again, it comes in front-wheel drive or all-wheel drive, depending on what region you are, whether you're out west, down south, up here in the northeast where it's needed. And that also does offer a sport hybrid model with a little bit more power, not too much of an upgrade in terms of power, but a little bit more of a boost. I've never driven the hybrid model, so I don't know the differences there on that. That car starts at 44 and change, and then goes up. I think you can actually top somewhere about 55 with it, I want to say. So those are your bulk cars, and then the last one, like I said, your exotic sports car is going to be your NSX. The NSX, I want to say, came back in, I don't know if it's 2017 or 2018. It had disappeared for a long period of time. I think the car originally came out, I want to say if it was 90 or 91, and stuck around, I think, until about 2005, 2006, I want to say. The car was ultra light back then. There were a lot of firsts for this car. It was the first car that was made all of an aluminum body and shell. I think it had like a space frame on it, which was groundbreaking. Now the car was never overly powerful. Back then, I think it would range right around the 275 to 280 horsepower mark. But even back at that time, you were looking, it was in the 60 to 70,000 price point. So in the 90s, that was expensive for a car, so that kind of set the pace. Right now, like I said, it's a 3.5 liter V6 twin turbo. So that itself puts out 500 horsepower, and then it's got hybrid motors on there. The hybrid motors add up to another 72 horsepower. So you're looking at 572 horsepower with all of that going on. It's all-wheel drive. The car itself starts at 158,000. I'm going to get more into this a little bit later on, but that's just basically a rundown of the initial lineup. That kind of like, okay, so where you can go to. Now, Acura is always tied into a lot of rumors, and that's where it gets tricky, because you figure, okay, we just went over the lineup, you know what the lineup is, you know what it is, and you know what's not there. So when you hear the rumors about there are rumors for speculation of an ILX coupe, you kind of get excited because they haven't had a compact coupe since 2006. The RSX ended in 2006. So you figure from 2007 on, basically at this point, for the past 14 years, there's been no small coupe on there. Now again, keep in mind the NSX, I'm not talking about that because that's an exotic supercar. That's at a much higher dollar amount. I'm talking about price point for basically anyone can kind of go in and take a peek at one. So the RSX coupe, nothing compact since 2007. If you go back a little bit farther, I want to say 2003, I think, was the last year of the CL coupe, which that was basically a midsize. That was basically a two-door model of the TL back then at that point. So there's been no midsize coupe. You figure since 2003, so we're talking 16 years, there's been nothing there on that size. So there's just some things that people have always wanted that. I remember specifically when I was working at Acura, I don't remember the time of year it was, but there was a gentleman who came on in and he had no familiarity with the brand at all. And he had come on in and said that he was looking for for something sporty. Now I forget the verbiage, whether he said a sports car, something sporty, a coupe. I forget exactly how he had said the verbiage on it. But I brought him over to the TL at that time because that was a sports sedan. Most cars in that segment are sports sedans. And then he said, no, I'm looking for a coupe. I'm looking for a two-door, or maybe I'll stretch to a convertible, but rather do a coupe. I told him we didn't have any coupes in the lineup, and that was basically enough for him to say, okay, thank you, and walk out of the showroom. We had nothing to offer him. So again, from that point, there's nothing that I could do. There's nothing I did wrong, but there's just nothing that the brand had to offer him. So there's that part. A lot of the rumors that you have on here usually consist around the NSX. Now it gets frustrating. If you saw my Dodge video, I'm just gonna touch on that for real quick. I don't want to focus on Dodge here. My main thing was, figure your NSX, it's such a limited vehicle, okay? It's got a high price point, it's a limited market. That's not most of the, 99.8% of the people coming in the door are for the bulk mass cars that you have, or something that you may not have in the lineup at this point. So if you go through here, the NSX, they're talking about a Type R model, which would range probably about 650 plus horsepower, if not more, and probably starting price at 200,000 or greater. Okay, so that's small market. What are we talking about? Now again, currently that model is just a coupe. That's it. There have been rumors about possibly a Roadster model. Now, Roadster is typically another form of a word you can use for a convertible. The previous generation, the original NSX, it was not a convertible, it was a Targa. So what's meant by the Targa is you've basically got based on the design, you've got your flat roof, you got clips on the driver's side, clips on the passenger side, you undo them, you lift up the panel, you store it in the trunk. And those two clips have basically turned the car into a convertible. That is what's called a Targa. So if they were going to do something to try to stick to the heritage, if they did a Roadster version, that would be my guess on what they would do to stick to the old school instead of going through a whole retractable roof. adding more dollars to it, more weight. I don't think they would do that. There's also a rumor in here, which again makes no sense, about they would possibly consider making a lightweight non-hybrid version. Now this one I don't understand, because if you were going to do something with the vehicle, that should have been what you were doing in the first place. And then if you wanted to do something to, get more power or an alternate version, then that would be the way to go. But I just don't understand and kind of going backwards. Unless they're figuring at some point rearranging the models and maybe tuning the current NSX to become an R, and then if they do a lightweight non-hybrid version that's a little bit less power, a lower starting point, I'd be on board with that, just because where it's at now, it doesn't make sense to me too much. But again, I'm going to get into the NSX a little bit later. Let's kind of throw some numbers out there. Let's kind of make you think a little bit. And the other big rumor, I heard this, I want to say roughly about 3.5 to 4 months ago, that the letters SDX, okay, were trademarked by Acura in regards to the possibility of being a full-size vehicle, SUV, within the Acura lineup. Now, if you go back to, I want to say mid to late 90s, so I want to say maybe like 96, 97, 98, somewhere in there, they had a working partnership with the Isuzu. So if you look up and do a Google on the Isuzu Trooper, you'll see that vehicle. Acura basically said, okay, give us that vehicle. They rebadged it as an Acura, and it was called the Acura, I want to say the SLX is what I want to say that vehicle was. And I don't know too much how the sales did on that, but the vehicle, Acura got a lot of heat for it because they had all these other vehicles that were good, there was quality, they were fun to drive, and now they're taking a cheap, low-end Japanese brand, slapping their badging on it, charging it a premium, and there were a lot of quality issues. So that ended real quick. That disappeared, and then that's when they came out with the MDX years later. So the SDX would potentially be something to come back and be in that full-size segment. You figure something probably where you'd be talking about, I guess you could say like the Escalade, the Navigator, something like those. So you're going to be a larger, the Infiniti QX80, so something that's going to be a larger 7 or possibly 8 passenger vehicle and more towing. So that's pretty much the main points of the rumor mill. There was a bunch that I found. I just wasn't going to go too into it, because the more you look, everything just seems to be all about the NSX, and you can only go so much with that, so I wasn't going to focus too much on that. Now, the one thing I want to do on here is, this is to the point where I'm going to go to and talk about errors that I think the brand is making, and give them some criticisms on here too. Now, the brand doesn't offer any performance upgrades anywhere. Okay, now I'm not talking about the MDX, and I'm not talking about the RLX, okay? The reason I'm saying that is, like I said, the MDX, there's a sport hybrid, so that would go from 290 to 321 horsepower, okay? And then the RLX hybrid, that's basically your standard RLX is 310, your sport hybrid is 377. I'm not talking about those sport hybrid models. I'm talking about, here's a 4-cylinder, here's an upgraded 4-cylinder with more performance. Here's a 4-cylinder, or here's a 6-cylinder with more upgraded performance. This is what I'm talking about, okay? Back when the RSX was out back in the early 2000s, you had an RSX and an RSX Type S. You had a TL Type S. A CL Type S. So you're getting more performance, more cosmetic upgrades, sportier look. That's something that, again, Honda, Acura, they're basically brothers, they're cousins. You know what I mean? The parts are there. It's easy to do. I just don't know why they refrain from doing it on the Acura brand. In the luxury market, you've got so many vehicles there. You could talk about Audi with the S/RS line. You've got Infiniti with the red models. You've got Mercedes-Benz with AMG. You've got BMWs with the M models. You got Lexus with the F. Volvo, I think theirs are called R, I think. I'm not 100% familiar with the Volvos, but I want to think those are called R. You've got a bunch of the brands that offer performance sport models. Cadillac, they basically have their V line. That's basically their high-end performance. Acura doesn't really want to do anything with that, and I just don't understand why I'm there. The one thing that they have done very, very nicely is they've recovered from the front. If you're familiar with the front end grille, it used to look like a very plain, what people would call the duckbill grill. So they had that for a long period of time. A lot of people didn't like it right off the bat, so that was something that scared people away. People would still come in. There were actually specific dealers. It wasn't a manufacturer suggestion. It wasn't manufacturer coverage. Specific dealers were doing it. I know they were doing it with the TLs, where they say, okay, if, let's just say Basque Red 2, that was a color. So it's kind of like a cherry Merlot, like a burgundy color. If that was the color of the car, then what they would do is they would send it to the dealer's body shop, take off the grill, and they would paint the grill from silver to this cherry red, Basque red color to match the rest of the car. And just by doing that, it made a big difference. It was still ugly, but it was a vast improvement. So going from what the original grill, duckbill grill used to look like to the more aggressive stance and broadened look that it has now, that's a vast improvement. So that is one thing that's kind of kudos to Acura on there. Took a while, but they got it done. So I touched on this a little bit earlier. I just kind of jumped ahead on there. Again, in regards to the coupes, no RSX and no CL classes on there. They've lost a lot of potential buyers. So hopefully that's just something that they can get back and do soon. You don't really have to do too much to really change. Say, okay, here's the car. All you got to do is just change some body structure on the siding to basically still have your points for side impact to do that. But that's really the only thing you kind of have to change in terms of a frame, and then obviously door panels. There's not much more to it than that. So they're losing a lot of potential customers just for that coupe market. Now the NSX, this is going to be the big one. This is going to be a bulk of this criticism. What the hell are you guys doing category here? Okay. Now keep in mind the NSX itself. It starts at, I think I said before, about just over 157,000. Now, two things I want to go over with you. Because the NSX itself, you kind of have to look at it in terms of a broad spectrum. It's not like we're just talking about a Honda Civic and what are the cars that directly compete with it. When you're getting up into this supercar, exotic sports car type category, it's a little bit more of a broadened range. You kind of look at, okay, for my dollar, what am I getting? What are my options? Okay, so I'm going to be going over with some vehicles here in terms of dollar-wise, what is right there with the NSX, and performance-wise, what is right there with the NSX. So all these cars that I'm about to go through and mention are cars that I'm going to say are closely comparable to, if you're looking at the NSX, other cars to consider. Okay, so we've got the BMW i8. Okay, now again, performance-wise, I think it was at like $395, but dollar-wise, it was much more of a closer price point. I think it was around like the 150, 160 mark. The Porsche Taycan. Now again, that's an all-electric vehicle. That's basically designed to come out to go head-to-head with the Tesla But again, if you look at it dollar-wise, performance-wise, again, it's not that far. The GTR on the lower side. The GTR has a wide spectrum. The GTR starts at, I believe it's 117, and you can load it up if you do your upgrades. There's like 6 or 7 different model GTRs. You can go up to about like 218,000. So you figure 160 to 220, basically the NSX is right there in that spectrum. The Ferrari Portofino, okay, that is the entry-level Portofino. That's the cheap one. That's the poor man's Ferrari. Keep in mind. But yeah, it's still right there. You'd be talking about the Corvette Z06. Now again, the Z06 is not even out yet. It is due to be coming out in 2021. And I did some research on the new Corvette, the new 2020 with the mid-engine. Power-wise, I forget what the number was. I think power-wise, it's at like 475. I think it is. So it's about 100 horsepower less. But even if you go through and you take a new Corvette and you load it up with all of the ridiculous, unnecessary options that you're probably not going to get, but just for the purpose of this exercise, a maxed out Corvette right now, you're at $102,000, $103,000, and it blows that would blow the NSX away. You know, you can still get that kind of performance, that kind of exotic look on it. I'm not a Chevy guy. The new Corvette's nice. So, you know, if I can get what I'm getting out of that and save myself $75,000, why am I going to buy the NSX? Again, with the other cars it's in the category of, you can't justify that. So when the Z06 comes out next year, it's going to be closer to that price point. It'll still probably be less, and then the power is going to be right in that range. The Audi R8 is right there in terms of power and dollar range. The McLaren, the new Dodge Viper, once that comes back, that's going to be right in that category. In regards to price point, it's definitely going to be less. Again, if you cross over to my Dodge video, see I did that whole segment, but the price is going to be definitely less than where the NSX is at. Power-wise, it's going to be right there. And then there's a new Lamborghini that was just released this year, the Huracan Evo rear-wheel drive. So basically, this specific model is about, I think they said about $30,000-$40,000 less than the Huracan, the standard Huracan with the all-wheel drive. Because this is a rear-wheel drive, I think it's detuned, it's got some less power. This would basically put it in the NSX territory. So with all of those vehicles, the NSX, in my opinion, doesn't really stand a chance unless you've always been a fan, you just want something completely different that you're not going to see, because you're not going to see much of these. But again, like I said, the car starts at about 157 and change. You can go up to about 215, 216, somewhere in there. In my opinion, I think the vehicle needs a dramatic price drop. I don't see why the vehicle is in that price point, why it's that high. Realistically, you want the vehicle to kind of have some more relevance and to kind of get more sales. Now, it's tough how you go about it, because, like I said, each brand has a different face value than another one. All cars have different face value versus what other cars can offer. But on this, it doesn't make sense where it's at. You know, obviously with the Corvette, and I'm going to keep coming back to that because of where it's at. How come Chevy can do it? Okay, how come Chevy can make a car with that type of performance? And again, I'm not going to talk about the history. You know, the history on that vehicle goes all the way back to the late 50s. I want to think 57, 58 is where the Corvette first started. So you're talking about roughly 60 to 65 year range in terms of the Corvette itself. But if Chevy can do it, Acura can find a semi-reasonable way to do it. You know, if you want to keep the car at 570 horsepower, okay, that's fine. But the car doesn't have to be 158,000 into that. You know, you can start the car at, even if we just call it about 100, okay? High, low, either way. Even if you do a stretch and call it 110, you know what I mean? You can do it. Nissan's right there with the GTR. The GTR puts out the same, if not more, power depending on which version of the GTR you're looking at. You can do it. So there's no reason that it shouldn't be in that situation. So if you go on the website and build the vehicle, some of the options that price it up are ridiculous. The only two options I'm going to give, again, rim upgrades you can do, okay, fine. Paints, okay, depending on the vehicle, paints can be an option, okay. New for 2020, they have a yellow paint. That's like a $3,000 or $4,000 option. The two ones that blow my mind the most are XM radio is a $500 option on this car. A $500 option. So how come it's $500 option on the NSX, but it's like I don't know, it's maybe like a $75 option or part of a package on any other vehicle? Please indulge, I'm curious. And then the brakes. There's a few different brake packages. So depending on what you do, the one brake package is it's like just over a $10,000 option for brakes. I thought that was a little crazy, but again, that's just me. Again, going through, like I said, the NSX is the main thing that they really need to kind of look at. Stop putting the focus on there, because like I said, that kind of goes to the same problem that Dodge is having with the Challenger. It's one specific vehicle and one specific market for this group of people that you're focusing in. Focus on bringing people in collectively. And, if you get that in the meantime, okay, fine. But, if, I'm starting at 157, I go through, I make some tweaks up here, I'm at 195. All right, 195 is a little crazy. If you start the car at 100, 110, you put some of those same options, now you got the car at maybe 145, 150. Well, depending on who you're talking about, 40, 50,000 can be a big difference for certain people. It's still a lot of money. I'm not changing the fact of that, but it's, 150 versus 190, 195. That's an entire car. Depending on what you're looking at, that could be 2 or 3 cars. So it's still a gap. So the main thing I want to look at right now is on here is just going through is realistically what the lineup could be and what it should be if they just kind of sat back. Because remember, Acura is the performance and a luxury brand of Honda, okay? So the two things to know on here is the one thing is most important, which is in a statement. Acura Engineering always states that Acura will always outperform Honda, okay? I get it, it makes sense, and it should be. It absolutely should be. You figure Nissan Infiniti should always outperform the Nissan. Toyota and Lexus should always outperform the Toyota. So I completely get that. When you're stepping up in the luxury should always outperform your blue brand, as I would call them. Okay, so that's number one. The thing to understand on here is in my proposed lineup, I'm going to be talking. You're going to hear me talking about the A-Spec model. Okay, now the A-Spec model in my proposed lineups here, they should be a performance upgrade model based on the current A-Spec lineup. Okay, the A-Spec it's a cosmetic package. So you're basically looking at nicer wheels, a sportier front bumper, a sportier rear bumper, and then a special interior leather. I think it's like a red race stitched leather, something like that. I've only seen the A-Spec a few times, up close, but I've seen a ton of them on the road. So that's the one thing to know on here. So we're going to start with the ILX. Now the ILX, you start with it, you have a standard 2.4 liter 4-cylinder, 200 horsepower, nothing crazy. That's what's in the vehicle now as your standard vehicle. I would recommend doing an A-spec model. So this would be a performance upgrade. So this would be basically a tier 2 car. Now what you could do in here is, I'd recommend here you would have a 2-liter turbo at roughly at about 250 horsepower. Now, Acura themselves do not have this motor. This is a Honda motor. In the current Honda Accord Sport, okay, with the 19-inch wheels, they have a 1.5 standard engine and a 2.0 sportier engine. So this would be the sportier engine in the A-spec. So that's what I would recommend in the ILX, which is your compact coupe, just to offer something a little bit more fun of an upgrade if you need the 4 doors, but you still got to drive it. At this point, I would now be recommending the RSX, which is going to be your coupe version of the ILX. Now, the other thing to keep in mind is if you go through here, ILX, TLX, RLX. Those are basically all of these sedans with the L in the middle. If you look at the RDX and MDX, and then even the SDX being a rumor, anything with the D in the middle is their SUV lineup, and then anything with an S in the middle is their coupes. So if you think about their old RSX, okay, you figure the NSX. So I'm bringing the RSX here, and then there's another one that will be coming up with a CSX in a minute. So the RSX, I'd recommend bringing that name back. Essentially, it would be a 2-door ILX, okay? And again, standard engine, the same as what the ILX has. You have your 4-cylinder, 201 horsepower. That's your standard vehicle. Offer an A-spec model. So again, your same 2.0 liter turbo, 250-ish horsepower on there. And then go back and bring back the Type R, which is a historical thing from the old Integra. Now you figure what you can do in this case is, this is probably gonna be a little bit tricky, but you can do it in terms of the tuning. I would recommend probably right around 340 horsepower. All right. So the way you could do this is if you cross over to the Honda Civic Type R. That engine is I believe it's a 2.0 liter turbo. It's 306 horsepower. So you figure you just take that engine, make some tweaks on there, and bring it from 306 up to 340, and you can put that in the RSX. Price point, where would it be? Maybe start the car, maybe put the RSX Type R maybe in the 40 to 45 range. Because if you go to the Honda dealer, a Civic Type R fully loaded, you're at 42. So the Civic gets, loaded up, it can be pretty pricey. But if you're getting more performance out of it, you're going to be getting, more things out of it too than what, similar, but a little bit more than what you're going to be getting out of the Honda Civic. So we go down to the next one, which is going to be the TLX. Now this is going to be, we're going to know about this a little bit very soon. So currently you have your 4-cylinder. It's a 2.4 liter engine, 206 horsepower. And then you have a 6-cylinder option as well, which I spoke about before. The V6 has 290 horsepower, and there have been rumors of a Type S that is going to be coming. The Type S, they haven't made any announcements on it yet. I've been looking for some numbers and some specs. The only thing that's been said is it's going to be well over 300 horsepower. So my figure is somewhere in the 360 to 380 range, probably 370 to 380, just to have that gap big enough from the standard 290 on there. So that would be that one for the TLX sedan. And then if you bring in a mid-size coupe, there are 2 names that you could do. Okay, the CSX. Now the CSX, on the basis of the CSX actually was a vehicle only in Canada back about 15 years ago. That was basically when we had the RSX, just the coupe, that was the 4-door version up in Canada. So we didn't have that vehicle here, but Acura does have the name, okay? And again, you figure previously the CL was the coupe that matched up with the TL back in the late 90s, early 2000s. So CSX could work that way, or you could just go with the TSX, which is a previously known popular model. I don't think they would do that because between TLX and TSX, that might be a little too close to confusing. So let's just call it the CSX being the better name on there. Standard, just because, again, at this point, just have a little bit more horsepower than the sedan. That same four-cylinder, the 2.4, let's call it about 215 horsepower. All right. The V6, again, same thing, just a little bit more of an upgrade. The V6, instead of 290, let's call it about 300. And then again, offer also the Type S model on the coupe model of the CSX, we'll say, as well. Now again, you figure, about 10-15 more horsepower here, so in that same 360, 370, 380 range, throw about another 10-15 on top of it because it's the coupe over the sedan here. So that's that. Now we're going down to the RLX. Now I actually read an article, I want to say about a week and a half ago, that the RLX is going to be canceled after 2020. Thank God. It is going to be it's going to be continued globally. So in the rest of the world, you figure Europe, Japan, Canada, anywhere outside of the United States, it is going to be continued as the Honda Legend. So it's still going to be made elsewhere. It's just the American market. Like I said, it doesn't boast well over here. So that's going to be discontinued. So the next model I'll say we're going to go down to is the RDX. Now, if we're going through, I'm going to kind of keep it going a little bit because there's no reason not to. The RDX, the standard engine on there, it's a 2-liter turbo, 4-cylinder, 270 horsepower. So that's what's standard in the vehicle now. And then what you could do on here is, again, they offer an A-spec model now, but it's just a cosmetic package. So on here, do the A-spec, okay, no Type S, do an A-spec model, and bring it up to 306 horsepower, which essentially this would be the Civic Type, Type S engine. I'm sorry, Type R. This would be the Civic Type R engine. So then I would go through and do that. And again, the car is quick enough now as it is, so you figure it would essentially be the same size engine. It would essentially be the same transmission that's attached to it. So you could do that to add 36 horsepower. That would feed real nice into that. It's very doable. So that's something that could work. And again, they don't have to spend any money in regards to this relationship because they're engines that are already made. So it's just a matter of making extra engines to put into this factory in this model, whatever the case may be. There's no partnership where they got to pay to get these engines. They already exist. It's very easy to do. The MDX, now again, standard, you have just a 3.5 liter V6, 290 horsepower. That's where it's at now. And like I said previously, then you also have a sport hybrid. The sport hybrid is a small upgrade. You figure it's 321 horsepower. Now, again, we're talking about 31 horsepower. I don't really think it's too much of an upgrade because you figure for all of the extra weight the vehicle is taking on for basically the hybrid battery, the cables, the hybrid motors, all that stuff for an only extra 31 horsepower. So that power might actually just be balanced out for the extra weight, and all you're probably really getting is just some of the extra fuel economy. So that's that part. But I would offer, again, an A-spec model on here, which is offered right now, but make it a performance model. And then again, I would basically say just take the same the Type S motor out of the TLX and put it right here in the MDX. You figure you'd be looking roughly, again, same thing, the 360, 370, 380 performance range on there. and then you'd be all good. And then the other thing on here would be is we spoke about the rumored SDX. Now, like I said, it's a fresh rumor. There's, at this point, it's so early, I don't know the specifics, the truth, is it a long shot, whatever the case may be. There's no way that I can tell that at this point. But let's just go on a hypothetical situation. You figure that would be a larger vehicle. You're talking about at least a 7, possibly 8 passenger setup, depending on the format. You could go one of two ways, depending. I think it would probably be a V8. Again, because if you're going to have this large vehicle, it is going to be not as much for sportiness, which is not a problem, but it's going to be for basically, this is going to be a person tower and obviously a luggage tower. So this is going to be something in the true sense of a true truck, where you're going to want obviously towing and a lot of torque to it. So these performance V6s I don't think would work. I would have to think that they would probably have to look into developing an 8-cylinder, and you figure right around the 380 to 410 range. Honda / Acura, they generally don't like to develop too crazy performance without trying to keep the economy, the MPGs, very comparable. So they'd want to keep that up and develop that, especially trying to figure out the weight too. And then figure then obviously down here at the bottom you'd have the NSX. You know, like I said, that car needs some work. You know, I definitely think they need to reconsider that vehicle in regards to how they're developing it, pricing it. I think they definitely have to figure next generation, which maybe in 3 years, whatever it may be, I don't know at this point. I don't know if they want to figure a whole new drivetrain system, but they just got to do something to bring the price down so it's a lower entry point and then go from there. Because I don't think at this point, I think the NSX is an irrelevant vehicle. So that's my thoughts, that's my insight, that's how I currently feel about where Acura is. Like I said, having Honda right there, Honda helps them out a lot, gives a lot of flexibility, makes a lot of this feasible and possible for them to do. Honda's going to be coming soon, so that's going to be another part to follow up with this soon. But definitely do me a favor, if you like the content today, hit the like. Tell me what you think. I want your feedback. I'm always curious to hear what other people think about my opinions. What are your thoughts? What are your opinions on you know, what they're doing and what you'd like to see them do? So definitely let me know. And again, make the comments, and I will be interacting with you. Talk to you guys soon.